Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Afternoon Tune. I'm your host, Josh, and I got my two special guest hosts today. I have Tim and Sage from Rated M for Immaturity there, Twitch channel, YouTube channel there. How's it going with you guys?
Doing pretty good myself.
Very,
Doing great over here.
very nice to hear. Thank you, Tim, for returning. It's been a minute since you've been on.
Always
Uh,
glad to be here.
I think the last thing you were on, you helped us with an anime review, right? You came on.
I believe Hunter x Hunter, if I'm correct.
I, I think it was the you did the rankings for the Avatar episodes.
I did that one as well.
Yeah, so Tim's been
Or
on.
yeah.
Yeah. Search the channel there. Tim's been on helping with some reviews there. He did the Elden Ring DLC review there. He did that. And he did also the Avatar rank. He joined us for that. They're ranking top 10 favorite Avatar episodes. Are you excited about the movie coming out there, Tim?
Yeah, I heard it just got delayed from January of next year to September, so we'll see if it doesn't get delayed. Maybe I'll see it before I die.
Yeah, let's hope you live that long. Let's see. Let's hope. Well, at least you don't have stage 9 prostate cancer. At least you don't have that. So there's that. Honestly, I didn't even know it went up to like stage 9. I thought it was only like stage 4. I didn't even know it went like to that high of a
I mean, only after like 10 years of having it.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even know you could go up that number. Wow. So there's a ninth level of stages of cancer. I didn't even really know that. So there you go. So yeah. So he probably won't be seeing Avatar, but hey,
No,
probably miss maybe
no Elder Scrolls 6 for him.
Yeah. I mean, he won't even probably make it to GTA 6. I mean, that's a shame. You know.
I'm not sure any of us are going to make it to Elder Scrolls 6, if I'm being honest.
No.
But we got a good show for you people today. Tim and Sage are joining me on this show. Going to do some video game reviews there. Lies of P, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and Assassin's Creed Shadows there. And then also going to do a movie review. Me and Sage got Batman Forever and do a tribute to Val Kilmer. I know it's been a minute since he passed away, but this review's been in the docket for a while. Finally get this off the schedule there. Do this Batman Forever review there. Val Kilmer recently passed away this year. So yeah, just paying tribute to him and do a retro review for one of his movies, and that is Batman Forever, which came out on my birth year. Batman Forever, 1995. Good old Batman Forever there. So very, very awesome. So it's actually the 30th year anniversary of this movie. Actually, it's 30th.
Yeah, right on the dot.
Right on the dot there. Actually, it's coming up. The movie came out in June 16th, so right around the exact 30th year anniversary of this film.
So make sure that it goes up that day on YouTube.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll schedule it for that day on YouTube. Yeah, June 16th. Yeah. But so we got a lot of stuff there. But Tim, Sage, let people know about you. What you got going on? What you got coming up? All that good stuff.
Find us over at Rated M for Immaturity every Tuesday afternoon about 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're actually going to be starting Clair Obscur Expedition 33 on the stream tomorrow. And then it's probably going to last us a good bit of time because it's a meaty game. We don't usually do long games on Tuesdays, but we're making an exception for this. Otherwise, I'm hoping to start up our Saturdays again pretty soon. We just recently played Rise of Kong as a little sequel to Gollum. We're working our way through our bad game list here as well. But yeah, otherwise, that's the only stream that's like currently every single week. But working on getting the Saturdays back up soon.
Yeah, that doesn't even look like Kong. That looked like a Yeti. Don't even look like.
That's actually Kong's mother.
Who's it?
Playing as? That's actually Kong's mother.
Oh, that's his mother. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Well,
so you get a little bit of
Kong jumps a little bit better than her.
He doesn't. Not in that game.
Oof.
Damn. Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'm sad I missed.
That's a one-off stream. We're not coming back for another episode of that one.
Really? I want to see you guys do another episode of this.
Oh, it was unbearable. It's that much worse than Gollum.
Wow. The controls are that bad.
Played all of Gollum.
Wow. So the controls are that bad with it? Clunky? They look pretty clunky, not very sophisticated.
You can barely make the game work.
It looks like an 8-directional.
It is kind of, yeah. We were all passing the controller back and forth, struggling none of us were able to do this well.
Mm, yeah. But this is your channel right here, getting close to 500 followers here on Twitch. And then you're also on YouTube as well. Check you out, Radiant Infant Maturity there, getting close to 100 subscribers there. And besides you guys playing that delicious Kong game, you got some other great games that you can check out here. Got a huge playlist there. Action adventure games. You got first person shooter games. You got RPGs here. You got horror games, all kind of different variety. Playing some Resident Evil. You got playing some Mortar Shell, playing some Elden Ring, playing some Mafia Definitive
50
Edition.
whole episodes.
Whole episodes, yeah. So, hey, if people wanted almost any type of game you could imagine, you guys have probably played it, and it's up on this playlist right here. Playing some Cuphead. Rumor has it Martin Thomas is still at the tutorial level there with Cuphead.
Yeah, you never made it past that.
Never made it past that, but good old Cuphead there. Yeah, so all these type of different games there. Awesome stuff there from that. I haven't even beat Cuphead myself. I've only beat a few bosses. I haven't finished the whole thing there myself.
I have beat Cuphead, but I need to go back and play the DLC still. Because they added a fourth island of bosses, and that I have not done.
Okay.
One of them has a bunch of gnomes on it, though. So if you've been on our channel, you know that we make a little bit of a theme of that. So we're gonna have to circle back to it eventually.
Very cool. So yeah, Rated M for Maturity. You guys are basically on everything. Twitter, same thing. Rated M for Maturity there. You can check out your guys' thoughts there. Very, very nice. Future streams. So Friday. Hopefully Nick and Dust can join me. I'm going to be doing reviews for the weekend film Hurry Up Tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a review for the video game adaptation horror film Until Dawn. Do a review for Friendship, which is the Paul Rudd. What's that guy's name? Tim Robinson. Tim Robinson there, film there. And also do a review for if we can do it, it's Reacher season 3. Finally do a review for that if I can jam that in there. Been trying to do a bunch of catch ups with all these movies there, and then also jam packed with that. We'll also see Lilo and Stitch, which is the latest Disney live action remake coming out. And also, I think, yeah, Mission Impossible that comes out as well this week. Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning. It's Tom Cruise's Final Reckoning right there. So excited to check that out. Are you gonna check out Mission Impossible? Are you gonna check out that?
I will, but I still need to watch the last one.
Oh, okay.
I need to catch up. I enjoy the movies. I mean, the stunt work is, like nothing else really. So, if nothing else, it's at least worth seeing for that.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is the Pope of cinema. It's always about, hey, got to preserve the film and got to, do this the natural way, got to do this, all this AI and technology is what's ruining things. He's all about just preserving.
Didn't he actually go to space for this last one or something?
I don't know. I didn't hear
safety precautions. they sent him into space to film a scene or something.
Oh, okay.
I 100% believe it.
Maybe that's not true, but it's easy to believe, right?
Didn't he hang off an airplane as it was flying? So I could see him doing it.
Yeah. He doesn't even have safety gear on. He is just doing it with his pure upper body strength. Man is insane.
Yeah, he's crazy, man. He's out there, man, living that life. Tom Cruise, and he's in his 60s.
Yeah, he's over 60, and he's still hanging from airplanes.
Yeah, hey, man, good for him, man. So yeah, he says he never wants to retire from acting. He says, "I want to be making movies until I die. Never ever wants to stop."
I think he'll die doing a stunt. I mean, it might not be for another 20 years, maybe, but I think he's gonna keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it as an adrenaline junkie. And something, whenever he goes, it's gonna be some really out there, high scale stunt that he's doing.
Yeah. He just, man, I mean, that'd be a way to go out if he did end up doing that. But it just, yeah. And looking back at his filmography, I mean, Tom Cruise has had a really great filmography, a lot of great classic movies there. Jerry Maguire and Days of Thunder and Mission Impossible movies and Top Gun. I mean, he really is, had a really, really great filmography there. So, great career.
He did have one of the worst Irish accents put to screen, though.
What was that?
Let me see. What was that movie called? Far and Away.
I didn't see that. No.
He's there's a scene where I swear this is how he said, he goes, pushes his wife down into the tub, and they're being romantic, and he looks at her and goes, "Tell me you like me hat." I swear to God, that's what he sounds like.
Sounds like one of them cartoon leprechauns, huh?
Yes, he does. Like he sounds like the leprechaun from The Simpsons. I mean, he's about the right height, if we're being honest.
Yeah. So I think it's this scene. This also has this is Nicole Kidman in here too, huh?
Yeah. Back when they were a thing, so.
They were in quite a bit of movies together. Yeah, they were in like 3-4 movies
Try to
together.
remember.
Well, think hard. If there's any brain left in your head. Look at you. They're making a fool of you, the ward boss and his friends.
He's not Australian, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I guess this is where he pushes it down right here.
Yeah.
For they're just using you.
Said that's enough.
In a bathtub and everything.
Tell me.
Oh, is this where that Man of Steel? Is this what scene that inspired that? Where he jumped in the bathtub with it? Is this what?
You know, that would be exactly Zack Snyder to just pull from this completely nonsensical source.
You like my hat?
Not wearing a hat.
Say it. Say you like my hat.
You're not wearing a hat.
Say it.
Okay.
It's a weird moment.
Okay. The Emperor had no hat. Awesome stuff there. So yeah. So that's what we got. Future reviews. Saturday, I'm going to do a retro review for Lilo and Stitch, the animated film. I'm going to do that with Chris from Black Stuff's podcast there. Do a review for that. Sunday, I don't have anything planned there for stream wise there. Probably still going to be just catching up on movies. I want to see that Nicolas Cage movie, The Surfer. I want to go check that out.
I cannot wait. There is a scene in that trailer where he is shoving an entire rat into a man's mouth. That's
Yeah,
enough.
I don't even know what that movie's about, The Surfer. So I have no idea what that movie's about. So
It looks like a pretty hardcore, like psychological thriller.
something like that. So yeah, maybe if I can get a chance to see it, I will check it out there. The Surfer.
He's got a lot of projects getting buzz right now.
Yeah, and he's also going to be John Madden. He's going to be that. Him and Christian Bale are going to be in a David O. Russell movie. Christian Bale's going to be the coach of the Raiders, and he's going to be John Madden.
I never thought I'd watch a football movie, but there you go.
And I don't know. Apparently, I don't know. I think it was TMZ reporting. I don't know if it's true or not that he didn't know who John Madden was, and he thought that he's playing Joanne Madden, like this woman or something, and he got confused and he didn't know. I was like, so I don't know. I mean, that's what people said, that he didn't even know who John Madden was or anything. Like, okay.
I mean, that would honestly make me even more interested in the movie if that's true.
But yeah, so that's what we got there.
And Spider-Man.
Oh yes, Spider-Man Noir. Yeah, the live action. I've seen there's that photo that got released there of live action Spider-Man Noir there. That's going to be coming on. I think was it the Amazon Prime? Is it going to be coming on?
I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, you see the picture of Nicolas Cage in the costume and everything. I mean, it looks almost exactly like the animated version.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So hopefully that's really good there. Good old Spider-Man Noir there. There is that. Oh, yeah, very cool stuff. Yeah, so that's what we got coming up there. So let's get into these reviews here. I got a screening later tonight. I'm going to be seeing Hurry Up tomorrow in a couple hours. So I got to do the show. So, oh, yeah, you going to say something, Tim?
I was going to say we'll have to hurry up.
Oh, yeah. Hurry Up for tonight. Yeah, that's my version, the prequel of Hurry Up tomorrow there. Is there any review video game you guys want to start off with first?
Why don't we do Liza P first?
Okay, let's do Liza P. All right. So, Sage and Tim have a review for the video game Liza P. I did not get a chance to play it, but these guys did. Take it away. What is Liza P there?
Man, interesting, really interesting and different feel right off the bat here than I think you see most of the time. The art direction is immediately reminiscent of maybe something like Bloodborne. I'd say is maybe the closest example I could give you, but it's got this weird, like steampunk, Italy, but like kind of like Victorian England mashed into it thing going on.
Can't forget the good French in there.
There's a bit of that too, although not as much as the one of the other games we're going to be talking about. Um, but this game is probably the best. There's been a lot of kind of Dark Souls sort of imitators out there. A lot of games that you dub them Souls likes that try and kind of follow that formula. But I think this might be the best not from software game to do that. It manages to have a level of smooth precision to it that it gets all the clunkiness out of some of those other copycats. That's all that's gone. And starring Timothy Chalamet as Pinocchio, you get this really great combat system. It's kind of messing with parries a little bit like how Sekiro does, where there's a little bit of a greater focus on that. But it also has this kind of second tiered like weapon system with, I mean, I'm just gonna call it like a Winter Soldier arm that you can like augment and attach all these different things to. Uh, and that's kind of reminiscent of like the gun system in Bloodborne just a little bit, where it's like a secondary kind of like counter effect that you have. Um, this game was a huge surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was one of those, kind of like the other game we're going to talk about tonight, where they announced it and maybe 10 months later, like not even a full year, they released it. And it feels like, hey, you get something from a smaller studio. It was at like $59.99, so lower price point than like the average for games right now. And it feels more finished and complete and lacking in like bugs and stuff. And also the higher price pointed games.
And I would say that there is a lot of comparison to Bloodborne, and I would argue that Bloodborne was definitely FromSoft's first take at Bloodborne. But this, Lies of P, was able to kind of take the system introduced with that and refine it a little bit more. This game is nothing if not an example in polish. And you can kind of see that both in the cinematics, in the score, in the motion capturing done for some of these cutscenes. Everything is attention to detail, and that comes across with the gameplay systems as well, because every little feature does blend in well to all the other features. Nothing feels washed out or forgotten. Everything is allowed to thrive equally or synergistically in this environment. And it leads to some really fluid combat, some really interesting combat that you can approach it a number of different ways, and no way is incorrect. You're not going to be looking up a build guide for this game. You're not going to be looking for what the best weapon is, unless you get stuck on a couple different bosses. But this is a game that really promotes creativity and changing up how you play to approach a problem from a different angle. There's definitely some of what makes Dark Souls good, and that is kind of its callbacks to Castle or Metroidvania style shortcuts. Each level is designed, this world as a whole is designed to feel like it's all connected. And when you kind of circle back on an area, you are left with that same sense of accomplishment that games you might have played before kind of give. But you aren't necessarily left thinking solely of other games that you've played. This is a new experience, and it's definitely one I didn't anticipate ahead of time.
It does forge its own new identity despite having inspirations in other things. And that's one of the cool things about this too, is even though, like, obviously right off the bat, Pinocchio, right? Dark fantasy Pinocchio, that's the pitch. But you get some really interesting. I think the game's been out for 2 years, so I think we can talk about some of these without worrying about spoilers, really. But they fold in some other kind of like Victorian era stuff into this. Like, there's very much a Frankenstein sort of, or both a scientist and a monster sort of thing here. There's even a boss that I felt like was an allusion to a Bride of Frankenstein sort of character in here. I see some Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type stuff. It really it's an interesting blend of influences because you get your storybook stuff, but it's mixed with that sort of Penny Dreadful style as well.
Mm. So what is fully the story base? It takes inspiration from things like Pinocchio, The Adventures of Pinocchio there. What's kind of the main driving plot or narrative of this?
So you wake up on a train, right? That's your very opening, and you got to make your way to this hotel in the center of the city, and you're trying to find your creator Geppetto in the midst of kind of a robot apocalypse. Is generally how I describe it. It is
Yeah.
like the whole city uh, has this kind of steampunk element to it. They clearly were relying. They call them puppets all in the game, but they were clearly relying the society on animatronics, kind of all over the place. And something happened to cause them to just go berserk and kill all the people. So it is also that sort of kind of Dark Souls style thing where the world has ended somewhat, and you are making your way through the aftermath of this destruction, slowly kind of piecing together what exactly caused this set of events to go down. Why did everything go wrong? And as you piece it together, it's a really interesting story of there's that element of how much humanity do these creations have, right? How much of a soul are they really? And of course you are playing as the one that is the most riding the line between being human and being machine. uh and there's some good twists. I don't want to give everything away, but you find Geppetto pretty early on, and from there you get sent to there's this like society of alchemists that seems to be connected to what's going on, and perhaps someone intentionally caused this to happen. Like I said, I don't want to give everything away, but there is a bit of a like elitist kind of like alchemist conspiracy kind of going on as you start to piece things together.
And simultaneously, there is also this epidemic or pandemic that's broken out. And this released a couple years after the pandemic had broken out. So there was a lot of that kind of parallel where the fragmented survivors are all living in relative isolation. Nobody knows if anyone else is alive. And it is, as Sage said, very much so a world in decay that is far past its prime. And you are left wandering through the streets of a city of splendor. This was like the crown jewel of technology in the world at its height. And shortly after, or shortly before this game starts, it's actually the World Fair is supposed to be taking place in this city. And within a span of a couple weeks, things have landed at the state that they're in. And just kind of unraveling that decay.
Geppetto right there?
Yes.
Yep, that is Geppetto.
And much so like the other Pinocchios, this also too looks at the nature of humanity and, in no lesser part, the soul, what defines a soul. And it even takes a little bit of a look at the panpsychism, or the concept that everything in the universe is capable of consciousness when there is enough ability for complex thought and information gathering. And you create these flawless automatons that are built to be these combat monstrosities. They're built to create art, and they're built to supersede humans on every level. Well, then doesn't that make them something more than human? And it really does revel in that kind of philosophical debate. The core of the game is the lies that Pinocchio tells and how they relate to innate humanity, and that kind of look at the human condition and what all of this means, overlaid with some beautiful music, overlaid with great visuals and refined gameplay mechanics, makes it for something that honestly eclipsed what I was expecting, especially from a studio I hadn't really seen anything from before.
This might be their first game, actually. I'll double check that while we're talking here. But another element to it with the lying is that is fully a gameplay mechanic in the game too. There's several points in with several different NPCs you talk to throughout the game where you get a chance to tell them the truth or lie to them, and it does have an effect on how your character progression evolves, certain upgrades that you're able to get, and definitely has a lot of effect on like dialogue choices and how other characters respond to you as the game goes on.
Mm. And this game was developed by NeoWise and Round 8 Studio. It says here NeoWise is a let's see, holding company here from Korea as well. There, so you got that. It's a combination of that.
Yeah,
Um,
Neo is the publisher, and then Round Eight is the actual developer. It looks like they've only done two games. The other one is like a MMO, like online MMO game that came out in 2020. So yeah, this is only the second game they've done, and it's a very different style from the other game that they've done.
this game came out a few years ago. Came out a couple of years ago. There, 2023 is when this kind of came. Yeah.
I forget who it was in your chat, but like 2 years ago, someone was asking, "Are you guys going to review this at some point?" And you can tell them how we did.
Yeah. Very nice. So you said that it very much kind of has that Souls-like kind of look to it, very much inspired by that. Does it do enough of its own thing? Is it creative enough to kind of be memorable there? Except for
I think so. I think it's the best Souls imitator, I honestly, that anybody has done. Certain things like the lying mechanics, the kind of Winter Soldier arm that you can augment, and there's a bunch of different versions of it and equipment you can assign to it. And even just the way that your weapon upgrade system works, where you can like take the handles and the blades off of weapons and attach them to each other and create different kind of combinations of weapons. That's super interesting. That's very different from anything in Souls. Um, and I'll also say, this game has its moments, especially in the like last fourth or so. Like you're getting really close to the end. There's a couple of tough bosses, but I would actually say that the majority of this game is easier and more new player friendly than a lot of the Souls games are. Unless you're doing like specifically Demon Souls or I'd say it's either Demon Souls or Elden Ring. Some of the tutorializing in Souls games can be a little hard. Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
The games are much easier if you start with Demon Souls or Elden Ring, learn how they work, and then jump into the other ones. But this one I think does a really good job of, even if this was like your first game of this style, I think it does a much better job of teaching you how to play without making it overwhelming. And overall, it does have less like systems than like say Elden Ring, especially is the most recent one. It's not as complicated as that, but you still get a lot of satisfaction out of the systems that it does have. And in some ways, that's better. It's more digestible. I probably wouldn't tell most people to start with Elden Ring because of how big and complicated it is. But yeah, I mean, I think it does stand alone and stand apart creatively. From its gameplay to its visual, its art aesthetic, really, really everything. It even is honestly, for me personally, narratively a little more directly engaging than the Souls games.
I would agree.
Yeah, well, and then you follow up with this, Tim, because I know you were thinking the exact same thing. But in a lot of the Souls games, you really got to put those stories together yourself. You got to hunt and read things and kind of study the environment to understand what's going on. Unless you have Tim playing with you, we can just explain it to you like I did. But this game, it tells you its story. There are cutscenes. The NPCs are a lot less vague about what's going on. So if you're not looking to really have to do research to understand what's happening, this is a great alternative to that franchise or those types of games, because I think it's interested in very directly presenting its narrative to you in a way that the Souls games just don't. They're just not trying to. That's just going for a different type of story.
And I would say that they kind of, in a lot of ways, seem to have been looking at Bloodborne more specifically, but Souls from Soft properties more in general, looking for what could be polished, what could be refined, what could be evolved, and you kind of come across the narrative, and that is an excellent example of that, because one thing that is a really common piece of feedback is the story is too vague. You have to go out of the way. You're having to look at environmental design, like who inspired this architecture and what narrative parallels does that cultural context provide. You don't have to know archaeology for this one. You don't have to know French history. You don't have to know Pinocchio. You can look at item descriptions. You can listen to a plethora of dialogue that's available that is expertly voice acted, and you can choose to. There's cutscenes. There is a story being told. You can seek out the nuances and depth of it, but the core of the story is not locked behind you playing the entire game all in one section, or looking up a lore summary afterwards, or checking the forums to see what people agree on. For as much as I knew about the Dark Souls games, I looked at lore videos. I had to engage with other people in discussion about some of the more obfuscated answers and conclusions. This one, it doesn't bother hiding any of it, and I think that really, really does it a service, because they're able to simultaneously tell a story, but also tell one that has the divergent endings of a Souls game, or has the different character paths in terms of, are you more human or are you staying more loyal to your programming? And it allows for the characters that are involved in this. Like, you're not just going to come across Clagger and he's going to talk to you 5 times in the Firelink Shrine before attacking you for some reason. And that's the
You don't even know
story.
why.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, I guess Clagger's evil now. But in this game, you come back to the hub that is gradually filled with all these people you've discovered, or other survivors that have made their way to this hotel. And you do gradually get to learn their stories. You learn how the interconnected nature of all the survivors grows. And by the time the game is ending, you're just kind of left really thinking about the story in a way that you can't say you did with a Dark Souls game. You're not like, oh, I linked the flame, I restarted another cycle. What does that mean?
And a DLC is planned to come out summer 2025. You do have that. It's going to be a prequel story, so you do have that there.
You can even see like the spot in the game where you're probably going to go to trigger the start of it. There's like just like in Dark Souls, you have these spots that you rest, refill your items, but it'll bring enemies back, that kind of thing. But there's like a broken one that you can't use like midway through the game. It's like a very obviously, I think, going to be where the DLC starts.
Yeah. So right now, I see that this game, I see it on Steam for $60. This game is a couple years old, so I don't see a discount for it. You think $60? That's pretty good for this? Full price?
I would say.
It
does go on sale,
totally worth it.
but
And it does go on sale.
I would say that it is absolutely worth a buy. There's far worse ways to waste your $60, and I wouldn't call it a waste in this case.
And
plus, that's still $10 less than the base price of most games now. So it's still setting itself a little bit lower. And when I got it, it was I think only $35. So it still goes on. It does go on sale regularly if you watch for it.
okay. So, you got that. So maybe be on the lookout. Maybe during a Black Friday deal. Maybe they'll put that on sale since the DLC is coming out. Maybe they'll do that.
I'm sure there will be like an edition that comes with everything packaged in too.
Yeah. So Tim, did you play it on PC or you played it on console?
I played it on console.
All right. And same thing with you, Sage. You played it on console
Yep.
there. You played it on
I don't have
PlayStation.
a PC, sadly.
Yeah. Did you both play it on PlayStation?
Yes.
Okay. And no glitches, no bugs, no anything like that?
None
didn't
that I
run
could
into one
remember.
performance issue. Yeah, I not one time did I have the game lock up or freeze on me. it's a smooth 60 frames per second too that entire time. So you like your inputs are always coming out and being read properly by the game. Um, no, I really had no technical problems. Now, to be fair, I also played this year. I did not play it when it came out in 2023. Tim, did you play it? You played it when it first came out,
Yeah,
and it's even then you didn't
day
experience any
one, it
bumps or
was
glitches.
seamless. It's not often that you see a game that needs no hot fixes nowadays, and this was right out of the gate, crystal polish.
Very cool. So, I'll give you get you guys final thoughts and rating. Tim, what's your final thoughts and rating for Lies of P?
I think it's cinema. Also, not in part due to the cinematics in this game are cinema to me. I mean, I am fully engaged with every piece of story this thing has to offer, and I do truly think that if this were a movie, it would be on a lot of people's must-watch list. If it was a book, it would be on a best sellers list. But it's a game, and it is a must-play for me because it is cinema.
High praise. So that's the highest score we got. This is cinema, highest score you can give anything. Sage, are you going to follow that? But you're also going to give it a this is cinema. Where were you landing?
You know what? I think I am actually. I thought I was surprised by just how good this was. Especially, you hear the concept like dark fantasy Pinocchio video game, and you're like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder how good that actually is. It's a studio you never heard of before, but it really made an impact. I struggle to really think of any issues I had with it. Obviously, performance we just said ran really smooth the entire time. Is engaging. The combat mechanics are engaging, and also digestible and thoughtful. The art is beautiful. The sound design is incredible with this. Yeah. I mean, it really. I mean, if they do a movie, you're gonna get Timothy Chalamet in there. Like that has to be what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if this is up there for like one of the games that's gonna be adapted, just because it's already based on something that's been adapted. Yeah, I would say the only thing holding it back is, even though it's not as hard as the other Souls games, it is still a more difficult game than maybe your average video game in general. And so that is still going to make the audience a little more niche than, than say, your Final Fantasy coming out or your God of War or whatever, like it is going to still, the difficulty is still going to keep some people from trying it or engaging with it too much. But I do think it is more casual friendly than most of the actual Souls games. So it's only being held back a little bit by that. But I think I would give it to This Is Cinema. This would go on my top 10 of 2023 for sure.
Wow. So, time games there. This game did get great reviews. So when it came out in 2023 there. Um, and so yeah, a lot of people did really like this game when it first kind of came out. So you did have that. It was nominated for 7 year-end accolades, including the Game Awards and the Golden Joystick Awards there. So you did have that going on with that. It had a Metacritic score there out of 100. You had it on PS 5 there, 80 out of 100. You had it on also XSX there. You got an 85 out of 100 score. Open Critic 82%. So for the Game Awards in 2023, it was nominated for Best Art Direction. It was nominated for Best Role Playing Game. It didn't win that category there. The Game Developer Choice Awards, it was had an honorable mention for Best Visual Art. Gamescom Awards, it did pretty well. Won Best Action Adventure Game, Best Role Playing Game, Most Wanted Sony PlayStation Game. The Golden Joystick Awards, it was nominated for Best Visual Design. And the Steam Awards, it was nominated for Outstanding Story Rich Game. You got that. So, very
I
nice.
think it deserves all of it. And it's also the kind of thing too where there were so many big games, like titans of the industry, at once in 2023 that I do think this was easy to kind of get lost just in the cascade of all these great games that were coming out. But I do encourage people to go back and give it a try because it's just in another year where there wasn't quite as many things. I think this would have dominated more of the conversation.
In 2023, you had Metroid Prime Remastered, you had Resident Evil 4 Remake, you had Street Fighter 6, you had Marvel Spider-Man 2, you had Super Mario Brothers Wonder, you had Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the
Yeah,
Kingdom there. So yeah, you had a lot of that.
it
High
was
Five.
a massive year. There was just so much that year.
Yeah. So high praise from Tim and Sage for Liza P. Both give it This Is Cinema. Very nice. Yeah. Did you want to do Shadows or did you want to do Clair Obscur Expedition 33?
Well, let's do Expedition 33.
All right. Let's cue that up. All right. So, this is a game everybody's talking about right now. People are loving it. Indie darling, some people are saying. Some people are already saying this is the best game of 2025. The story behind this game is also very interesting. Just a couple of rogue developer there out of Ubisoft, was it? Or was it?
Yeah, Ubisoft.
U-
Three people in senior leadership positions came from Ubisoft, including like the director, kind of founder of the studio. Everyone else at the studio, though, this is their first game.
Yeah. So, take it away there, Sage. Give us your thoughts on Claire Expedition 33.
Oh, this game has been just living in my head the last couple of weeks since it launched. It is not just, I mean, I'm already gonna echo the sentiment of it being game of the year, but I think this is the kind of game that you see come along once every decade or 20 years even. This is the sort of like console generation defining game. And I think it's really important right now of all times when you see, both Nintendo and Microsoft, and I'm sure Sony in the near future as well. There's a push for games to be $80 now with these multi-hundred-million-dollar budgets. And we don't know exactly the budget of this, but we know it's less than 100 million for sure. And with a small studio of only just over 30 people and a price point of this is 49.99, 45 if you have PlayStation Plus, and free if you have Game Pass. This is also just on Game Pass. So for all the copies this is sold, that's not even including people who are playing it on that platform. Now I'd been talking about this game since they announced it back in, it might have been Summer Games Fest last year, or it might have been a Xbox showcase, kind of August or so. And immediately I thought this looked interesting. I wasn't sure how good it was actually going to be, but I right away I had a feeling this was going to be worth checking out. And I was surprised actually how little people were talking about it before release. I felt like this looks really cool. This is going to be one of those games where something I'm super into, but it just doesn't feel like it's a mainstream conversation game. Well, then of course launch day comes around, and this game has completely dominated like the gaming culture since then. And I think it deserves every bit of praise that it's getting. And I guess we'll divide it into different segments here, but to talk about the story first, and I only want to get so into the story here because I think that this is one of the most spoilable narratives in a video game I've probably ever seen. There is uh, there's some stuff in this that it reminds me of Attack on Titan, honestly, in the way that it is able to pull the rug out from under you and recontextualize your understanding of things, and the level of foreshadowing that goes into it as well. That, even just myself, I'm going back and noticing little things, just rewatching and looking at footage to be able to talk about it in the review. There is just an immaculate level of detail going on here to where I can't even believe that they pulled something off this good. But what is the basic premise here? You have a city called Lumiere, obviously very very French inspired. This is a French game. You have a immense Eiffel Tower that you see in a lot of imagery in the trailers and stuff. And in this town, in the city, it is clearly destroyed. It is 100 years ago. There was something called the fracture that literally ripped the city off the continent, threw it into the ocean, kind of became an island. And ever since then, uh, 67 years ago, there's been this giant being called the Paintress. She's got this giant monolith that she sits at, and every year she paints a new number on this tower, and the number ticks down. And every year, the number it changes to, anybody that age or older instantly dies. The effect is very similar to like the snap in Avengers Infinity War. They kind of dust into nothing. Of course, there's rose petals too because it's French, so you got to have some of that in there. But that's just your basic setup, and all of that's established within 30 minutes of playing the game. Like this game delivers its pitch to you very quickly, and it's able to be like I think with both its voice acting, you have Charlie Cox, Daredevil himself, as the lead character here, and its sound design, which I believe that this composer has also never composed for like a big project before. This is also like a first time deal for them as well. But between the effective use of music and the stellar voice acting and just I think really very mature writing, this game's for me it was gripping within its first real cinematic. Right away it captures your attention, and I think it gets you invested for the entire journey very early. Um, Now, very quickly you set off on the expedition. You know, this big group of people goes out to try and stop the Paintress, and you get to explore this just incredibly unique world. I mean, the environments here are like kind of like nothing else you've seen. The best comparison I maybe could make is it at times kind of reminded me of certain environments in like the Dark Crystal or Labyrinth, maybe like a little Jim Henson dark fantasy, but it really doesn't look like anything else you've ever seen. This kind of French Baroque painting style that it has going on. There's no other video game like this. And you you know you get your kind of crew together. You've got this I think great cast of characters. Every time you meet someone, they're interesting right away. This game it doesn't waste any time. Like it constantly is bringing you in, getting you engaged with these characters and with the plot threads that's going on. Um, and like I said, I don't know. I don't want to say too much more about the story, just because even in the first act, I feel like there are some moments that you don't want to ruin them for anyone. Like you really want to be able to experience all of this for yourself. Um, and so like that's another thing I was going to say too, Josh. If you ever get a chance to play this for yourself, I think afterwards it would totally be worth coming back and doing like a spoiler cast discussion separately someday in the future.
Mm. Are you as enamored with Claire Obscur Expedition 33 as Sage is, Tim?
Well, first off the bat, I can say I have not finished this. Something that most reviewers ought to disclose when they review a game, but we are where we are in the industry. And I have finished Act 1, and it is, I can say that it's a game that I haven't quite played anything like before. I've never been really one for the Final Fantasy games. I've played turn-based combat games, or like even a JRPG or two, but largely Persona 3 is the closest I would even come to this experience. But it isn't. It's culturally distinct in that it's made from the French perspective, but also through this incredible journey of narrative that I didn't see any of the promotional material going into this. And I can say at least once every 30 minutes, I was going, Jesus Christ, how did they come up with this? And I'm 15 hours in now, so that's been quite a bit of doing that. I'd say it's getting annoying, but honestly, I'm more impressed each time it happens. It's like some fantastic planet hitchhiker's guide, but also it's really hard to draw an exact parallel to it. It's this fantastical odyssey that they try their hardest to and quite often come up with concepts that are only loosely drawn from other things. and I'm sure the more things you've seen, you might see some references. There's definitely some homages to Final Fantasy in there, and there's definitely some inspiration from other games as combat systems. For instance, the head developer has on his old YouTube channel some flawless Virgil boss, or like Devil May Cry boss fights, where he's just doing like 6 hours in, he finally gets the flawless Virgil kill. And he's somebody that revels in the ability to master a combat system or master a game in general. And that really does come through here. There's a dodge parry system. There's some other things thrown in, like jump dodging. There's a lot of things that you can do in this combat or this the combat aspect of this game that really do make it a lot more engaging. It's honestly, in terms of turn-based combat, like Baldur's Gate 3 is its own thing, I guess, distinctly from this. But
I'd call that a CRPG.
That's a CRPG, but this is definitely the best execution of it I've seen in terms of interactivity, in terms of how polished every graphic is, how polished everything seems to be. Much like Lies of P, so far I have yet to encounter a single glitch in this game, and it's kind of continuing this trend seemingly that we've had in the last few years of these smaller studios bucking the trend in the gaming industry of saying, we need 300 developers, we need $100 million, and we need some of the best names in the industry to be able to pull this off. But they got some really big names to work on this. Elizabeth English from Baldur's Gate 3 is in this. Jennifer English, yes. And Anthy Sidoricus. There's a lot of different high names in there. And for a studio of only 32 people, dog included, it's kind of neat. The more and more you find out about this game, the more and more there is to love. And for all I know, I will finish the game and be arch enemies with Sage because we'll be diametrically opposed on this. But I can't see that happening at this point in the competition.
Mhm.
There is, so when you touch on the combat systems that Tim was just talking about, it's an interesting blend of elements because, of course, yes, it's a turn-based game, right? But it is this hybrid system of turn-based and real-time elements. So even during your turn, right, you go through a menu, you pick your attack and you go. But even when that happens, you are then hitting button prompts. Something akin to maybe a God of War QuickTime event, which then makes your attacks more effective, or enhances them. Or in certain cases, if you don't hit those, your attacks actually aren't really doing a whole lot at all. And then, of course, as Tim mentioned, the dodge parry system that happens during the enemy turns that keeps you engaged the entire time. Because there's a lot of turn-based games where you could really you can set your move up, take your turn, you can get up, you can make a sandwich, you can come back. While the enemy turn is going, because whatever they're going to do is just going to happen, right? That's most turn-based games. You can't really do anything in the middle to defend yourself or change the dynamic. But here with the parry dodge system, you could, you want to keep your hands on the controller and very focused at what's going on at all times. And if you're good enough at that whole dodge parry system, you could negate ever taking damage at all. Because not only do you can dodge and avoid taking damage, but if you are parrying successfully on a consistent basis, it'll also do an automatic counter attack at the end of parry, as long as you parry every move in a combo. And it'll always be a very, very powerful counter attack. So you are able to just kind of master this system in a way that I don't think any other turn-based system has ever really done before. The closest that there's a game called Lost Odyssey back on the Xbox 360 that has a few of these real-time elements. I think they've said outright that was an inspiration for this game. So if you like this, definitely recommend going and checking that out. I haven't myself, and I'm definitely going to now. But then the other thing too that's very unique is before you even take your turn or do your moves, there's also like a straight up third person shooting like a gun mechanic, like a free aim. And there's weak spots on the enemies. You can also just take free aim at these. And it uses your action points that you use to take your turn. But actually shooting doesn't take turn itself. So you could get a bunch of shots in and then still do an attack and then set yourself up for a counter. There's a lot going on here. Even though it's very concise and it all feels fluid, there's a lot of it's like easy to pick up, difficult to master sort of a thing. Um, and on top of that, each character that you have in your party has a completely unique gameplay style too. So I won't say names or get too into the characters themselves because again, I really think people should experience the story for themselves here. But just for the gameplay types, you have like the character Charlie Cox plays, he's got this mechanical arm, right? They call it an overcharge mechanic, and as you do attacks, this uh, buildup of electricity happens, and you build up enough points from doing other attacks in between your moves, and you will get to use like a super move from this thing, but you have to like specifically charge it up with regular moves first. Or Mael, who's one of the other main characters you start out with, she has this whole system where she's got all these different stances where some of them do extra damage, some of them increase her defense. You kind of have to do this thing where certain moves will put her into one stance or another stance. You kind of have to think two or three moves ahead, like, okay, well, this move will put her in this stance, and then the enemy will take a turn. And then on my next turn, I'll be in this stance, which means I can use this attack more effectively. Um, there's another character who uses like it's just almost got a little bit of a gambit thing going on with cards, but it's kind of like a bit of a tarot card thing where there's like these sun and moon effects that you have to kind of charge up each of them, and then you can consume those charges to do like twilight attacks, which combine both to do like higher damage. And then if anyone's played Final Fantasy, a lot of Final Fantasy games will have these like blue mage characters where they can transform into enemies, right? And then kind of like have this super big variety of attacks. And I won't say anything about what the character is, but there is a character in this that does something very similar. And his skill tree is completely different than everyone else's. And even the way that you unlock the skills for that character are completely different from everyone else. You have to do this entirely different set of things. Once I got him, I kept him in my party at all times just so I could keep unlocking what was going on with him. Um, yeah, there's a lot here. There really is a lot here. Um, and I think, I didn't even feel like I was fully peeling back the layers of this combat system until I'd already finished the story and I was doing like the optional super bosses in the post game. Like I feel like I was still discovering new elements and ways to make things work. And a big part of that is I haven't even mentioned it yet. There's this Pictos system. So basically, Pictos are these passive status effects that you find these items, right? You can apply three of them to your character at a time. And one of them might increase your total health pool, or it might increase your damage, right? Those are simple versions. They get more complicated than just that. But you equip these, and when you do 4 battles with them, you master them. So then they turn into something called the Lumina. And then there's a second menu where you go over, and that's unlocking them for every character. And you have a certain number of points, and you can activate these Lumina effects. And as you go along, you that's like an infinite thing. There's not like a limit. There's a limit to how many attribute points you can put into your stats for the characters, but there's never a limit on the Lumina points. So you can continue to stack these status effects basically infinitely. I had one character doing 41 million damage points in a single attack by the end of the game because you can keep stacking these things over and over and on top of each other. And there's so much experimentation and variety in how you can build these characters. Like any one player can have a completely different experience. Like you're gonna finish this game and go talk to someone and be like, oh yeah, I had this character equipped with this luminous and this and like this combination of effects, and I was able to get them to do this. And you might talk to someone else and they're like, oh, I didn't even find that. Or like, I didn't even know you could do that or combine these things in this way. And I feel like it not only is it such a rich, engaging system, it's going to provide infinite replayability with this game. Not only because you have a lot of world to explore and a lot to do, but because you can just change so much about how each individual character works that I don't know if you could ever really maximize and experience every different variation, to be honest. Um, and then beyond the combat system, there are so many great things about how this game works from like a traversal perspective. It's like you have dungeons like any RPG, right? Or levels, right, that you go into. And these generally, I would say, I don't think I was in any individual dungeon longer than an hour in the entire game. Like they're these wonderful areas. They've always got these beautiful designs. There's one early on that's like this bizarre underwater environment that's got this, like, just crazy looking like color scheme, and but there's sea life moving around you in the air, but then it's also kind of not underwater. Obviously, they're speaking fully and moving around, and these environments continue to just be visually like striking over and over again. Like at no point did I ever walk into a new area and go like, oh, I've seen that at some point in the game already. Not one time. Like every single one was new and fresh and different. But in between all that, and I don't know what the last game to do this was. To be honest, the last game I played that had this was the original Final Fantasy VII. Now, I'm sure there are some other games that have done it since, but as far as I'm aware, that was the last time. But there's an actual overworld map here where you have like a miniaturized version of the whole world, and the characters are like kind of, you know, bigger than they actually would be for you to be able to traverse this whole area. It's very similar to like again in Final Fantasy VII, when you leave that first city and you have this world to explore, and then you get to an area, and then you downsize and you go into it and you explore it. But the overworld itself has this massive amount of stuff to do in it. Tons of optional things. I know, but it's another character I won't get too into. But you have a travel vehicle, just like in Final Fantasy VII. You have like the airship you used to fly around once you get far enough into the game. You have something that's akin to a vehicle here that just is able to. It's such a creative way of getting around. Yeah, it's just surprise after surprise. There are platforming challenges that you can find in this game that would make you think of like something like Mario at times. Um, I mean, yeah, I could keep going. There's just so much to it.
Tim, one of the great aspects that people are talking about with this game is the fact that of the music. The music is really incredible. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, one small parallel between these two games, Lies of P and Clair Obscur. They both have a record player in the home base area, and you can collect music as you go about the game, and you can go back to certain areas where you experienced a really heartfelt moment. You can get the soundtrack from that really heartfelt moment and play it in your camp whenever you want. And that's really neat, because a lot of times you have these really finely composed pieces. And I would say this game has a stellar soundtrack, but it's not every time you play a game with a stellar soundtrack will they go, yeah, here, just listen to the soundtrack in the game as you unlock it. Death Stranding did something kind of like that. Lies of P did something kind of like that. But it's not a common thing. And it really draws attention to how well crafted the soundtrack is. You get drawn into a fight and a jazzy little number kicks off, and it emphasizes the sillier aspect of what you're doing. Or you are fighting this towering beast, and suddenly you have music with all this reverberance and this kind of grandeur to it. It really feels like this much larger than life creature is bearing down on you. And everything kind of in between there. The combat has its own music. The overworld has its own music. Cinematics. evocative
I believe
of
there's
a lot of
8
French
hours.
music. Yeah, there's 8
There's 8
hours of music. And that means you're not listening to the same thing repeat unless you're just really chilling on the start menu, which you could. I've left that play for 10 or 20 minutes while I'm getting ready to play the game because it sounds great. And there's not a lot of games where I've just I'm like vibing to the start menu music, but this kind of stands a little higher than the rest in terms of sound design and soundtrack.
I've been listening to several of these tracks on repeat while I like walk to work or sit on my lunch break. I'll just turn music from this on.
Anything
It's
you
been
can
stuck in my
recommend? I
head.
can play a little bit real quick, or
I would say there is a song that is just titled Lumiere. Lumiere.
all right, I got it right here. This is the orchestral session right here. So it's like a music video they did, and this is the start of it right here of the song Lumineer. As they say.
Yep, Lumiere. It's
Mhm.
French for light.
Dim, dam, dadilam, vacarme s'en va dans l'oubli éternel. Et Gustave, dom guardiam, dilim, didididilam, lutes sera dolilam, seram. Dim, dim, da da da, dim, da da da, dim, da di da.
I feel like wasn't that in the car commercial they did this?
Maybe it'd be the best car commercial I've ever seen.
Very beautiful, yeah, very very nice, very
It's also
beautiful.
one of the only games I know of that has done an like the music video version of like the orchestral playing of it, like because that
Yeah, I don't see that much either. Like Attack
yeah
on Titan did that a little bit, where you could see like the whole orchestra in like a room playing together. I don't think I've ever seen that for a game before.
no, and it really kind of drives home just how much they want you to focus on the score and the sound design of this game, because from the dripping water as you're walking past a cave wall, as you're sloshing through a pool of blood, or as things are happening in the distance, there's this music weaving every moment together. And I wasn't expecting a game from a studio I had never heard of, from people I'd never heard of, to give me some of the best game music. Like something that, like Sage said, I find myself just humming as I'm doing my chores, and then going, you know what? I'll just put this on while I play my chore or do my chores. It's nice.
And like I said, this game heavily praised right here, so it's received critical acclaim across the board. It has already sold 2 million units within the 12 days of its release. So it has that going for it. It has the highest Metacritic score ever on there, with a higher rating there. And then also with this here, so it has an Open Critic score of 97%. Open Critic there. With that, the game has already went gold. Went gold on March 22nd, 2025. Coincidentally, 33 days before the game's
That's
release.
fun.
There, so it has that going for it as well. But yeah, a lot of people are loving this. Even the French president himself came out. Emmanuel Macron came out and celebrated the game's achievement, stating it's a shining example of French audacity and creativity. So even the president of France is even loving this game right here.
I've talked to British people who are like, "Damn, that made me like France for a little while."
They got
I will point out that there is a small tidbit in the game where there is this drunken team of explorers, and they're voiced by a Scotsman. And I was like, wow, this really is the French experience, hating on Scots too.
What will be your final thoughts and rating for Clair Obscur Expedition 33.2 Edition point there? What will be your rating there? Final thoughts and rating.
It would be honestly a lie to go anything less than a This Is Cinema for this game. I put about 100 hours into it fully platinumed 100% at everything in here. It sticks the landing. It delivers twists that I mean, like I started to see certain things maybe coming into play before like the big reveals start happening, but it is kind of like again, I'm gonna say maybe that comparison is a little bit like Attack on Titan, where even if you start to pick up on some things, when the answer comes, there's so much more to it and is so much more complicated that even if you think you have a grasp on it, you really don't fully. And it's so refreshing for something to be surprising, engaging, emotionally enthralling. Uh, and again, with the price point and the size of the team, and there's also this greater kind of broader meaning outside of the game itself for it to be coming out right now in this moment. Um, and I think it carries a lot of weight. I think it's a shoe-in for best soundtrack or best score at the Game Awards at the end of this year. I think there's a good chance it wins Game of the Year as well, especially because of its broader cultural relevance. Um, I will be replaying this for the rest of my life periodically. This is going to be this is going to be a lot of people's Final Fantasy VII. Like kids, like people that are like 13, 14 right now, that maybe they've only played so many games and this is kind of their formative years. This is going to be their Final Fantasy VII.
Mm. You had Astrobot, which was what the people said the Mario 64 of this generation. Now you got the Final Fantasy 7 of this generation. Sage is saying with Claire, Obscure Expedition 33. High praise. This is cinema. Tim, are you going to follow that?
Yeah, I really want to say this is peak because I don't want it to seem like I'm just throwing out cinema everywhere. But yeah, it would be disingenuous to give it anything less. I mean, it is yet to show me anything that is indicative of any darker trends. It's been rather solid in building mystique and building. It's got gravitas to it in terms of people are like, the longer it's out, the more attention gets drawn to it. It has maintained the cultural zeitgeist for well over a month, and it's not often a game can do that. It's something that really delivers home everything it promises and a bit more. It's a game that I find myself thinking about the story well after I've stopped playing for the day, and it is something that I can find myself really wanting to milk every minute of experience out of it. And yeah, so far this is my favorite game of the year, and I would be really impressed by whatever is able to come out on top of it. And so I do think it has a solid chance of winning Game of the Year just based on that metric alone. We're nearing the halfway point of this year, so good luck to the rest of the games coming out, because you have a $50 price point to beat. And if you had more than 30 people working on it, you really don't have that much of an excuse.
Yeah, $50 for how long? How long is this game?
The story, just if you just mainline the story and ignore the side content, I'd say you'll finish it in about 30 hours. And then there is an additional at least 30 hours of side content. But really, it's going to depend on. I mean, I feel like that number only works if you beat every single thing the first try. And there are some difficult, like super bosses in the open world map once you really start exploring that post game stuff. So, like I said, for me, I got about it was exactly 99 hours on my save file when I actually finished the last thing.
Mm, okay, so that's a good deal. A lot of game for $50 there. Pretty good. Remember,
And New Game Plus increases the difficulty as well.
okay, so there are difficulty levels with this. For people who maybe they're casual people of turn-based combat type games, you think this is a good introduction or to
I
that?
think it is actually. It's a great. This is maybe the definitive turn-based game for people who don't like turn-based games
Mm,
because of all the real-time elements to it. It because one of the things when people that don't like turn-based games, the reason they usually give is it's boring, it's slow. You're just going through these menus, and then you just wait and get hit, and then it's like the waiting part. I think is it's a big part of it. But here, when you do an attack, you got to hit those button prompts to make your attacks effective. When you're being attacked, you got to time your parries and your dodges. There's always something gluing you to the controller. And so I think this is like the turn-based game to suggest to people that aren't a fan of the genre normally.
Mm. Okay. And it has taken inspiration, as Tim was saying there, from other RPGs, turn-based games. There, Final Fantasy, Persona, those two series especially. So big inspirations from those franchises. So yeah, people can pick it up. It's on Game Pass right now if you got Game Pass. So if you just want to try it out and maybe not sure about buying it, you can do that. But hey, not a bad price point, $50 for a great amount of
And
game.
if you have PlayStation Plus on the PlayStation, there is a discount, so it's like $45.
$45 there. Remember when games used to cost $50? Remember that? That was way back. That was what, over 2 decades ago. Games used to cost
Yeah,
$50. Yeah, remember that?
it
Wow.
was on
And
the
for
PS2.
anybody interested, 30 hours of main story and 100 hours of completionist time. That's roughly on par with Elden Ring, and that was $20 more when it came out. So, and that had years and years of publish or advertising done to it. It had the biggest cultural hype you could have. And this so far, in terms of just polish, is outpacing Elden Ring, which has still got hot fixes coming out to fix shit.
Mm.
Even like what, 4 years later, 3 years later at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So yeah, people can pick it up. Yeah, console, PC, everything like that. Fortunately, it's not on the Switch. Maybe it's gonna be on Switch 2, maybe down the line. Maybe they're gonna put.
Probably will.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I bet I'm sure it can run it fine. Like this thing is, this game, it looks AAA, but it's really not. And I don't know what the PC specs are to run it, but it's I mean, it's clearly just based on the way it's built and put together. It is more manageable and easier to run than a lot of other games that are, I'd say, look either just as good or not even as good as this.
Mm. Yeah. So high praise again from Tim and Sage there on a video game. They give Clair Obscur Expedition 33 a this is cinema all around from them there. Very, very awesome. So yeah. You don't see anything this year, maybe possibly beating this game for game of the year? Nothing coming down the line?
I've been watching the calendar. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm looking at. The thing too is GTA 6 was kind of set up to come out later this fall. That obviously that got pushed to next year. But the thing is a lot of game studios were waiting and watching, and a lot of games were not getting release dates because no one wants to release their game within like a month and a half of GTA 6. So the end of this year right now is very barren as far as release dates for big games go. So I think once we get to Summer Games Fest in June and maybe a show or two in August, we'll start to get a better idea of what actually is coming out at the end of this year. Because right now it's like Ghost of Yotei is like it. There's like no other major releases scheduled right now. So I think we're still kind of waiting to see what the second half of this year is shaping up to look like. Um, Death Stranding 2, Doom: The Dark Ages just came out, Ghost of Yotei. There's a lot of other big games to be excited about, and we're probably going to hear some announcements soon about some other stuff that will be very much worth looking forward to. But like I said before, this feels like not just like a game of the year contender. This feels like a game of the generation contender, and we might get more games that are on that quality level this year. It's possible, but I mean, it's something special. I mean, this game I like genuinely to a similar degree as something like Alan Wake 2. Like it is on that level of artistic merit and integrity. And again, with its price point and the kind of current landscape, it's got a lot of significance outside of the game itself, on top of how good the game is. And I think, even if some other great stuff comes out this year, Ghost of Yotei, it's going to be a really big budget Sony first party exclusive. Death Stranding 2, I think I'm probably going to love that game, but it is Hideo Kojima. Everybody knows him. He's making a big, expensive blockbuster game, and nothing else. I just don't think anything else is going to have the sort of AA status that this does.
Mhm. Okay.
Even where wins meet, which is something I'd been kind of waiting a little eagerly to come out. I'm like, all right, it's wow, it's good, a tough act to follow, and I can see why some games are a little hesitant to give an official release date, because you kind of want the hype that is Expedition 33 to die down before you introduce anything else to the mix. It's just going to get lost in the fanfare.
Yeah. Some anticipated games coming out this year. You still got, like you said, Ghost of Yotei. Got that. There's the Onimusha game coming out. There's Metroid Prime still has to come out. There is, as well as, let's see here, let's mention that the new Super Mario.
Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Bonanza there. Mario Kart.
Borderlands 4, I think, is coming out this year.
Yes, Borderlands 4 is also coming out this year, so still some stuff there that could shake up there. It could be maybe in contention, maybe in the Game of the Year category there.
And like I said, we're going to get a lot of announcements in the next month or so. So there's still a lot of question marks about what's even coming out this year.
Yeah. But yeah, Player Expedition right now, high on top. A lot of people loving it. So I'm like, check it out.
Seriously, I cannot recommend it. To you too, Josh. Honestly, I think you'd love it.
Yeah, yeah. So awesome stuff. I do have Game Pass. I did download it on Game Pass, so I did do that. Very nice.
It would take you about the same amount of time it took you to play Control, realistically.
Oh, okay, nice, very very good. All right, so this is cinemas for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Say, Tim, you didn't play AC Shadows, right? You didn't play that, right?
I have not.
All right. Did you want to leave for this, or?
Yeah, I'll step out now. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having me, especially for these two tremendously great games. And good night to the rest of you.
Yeah. Tim, what you got coming up next, man? What you playing next,
man? I'm currently rushing through as much of Clair Obscur as I can, but I'm also dabbling into the Oblivion remaster a little bit. Good old Bethesda jank sometimes is like soup for the soul, because it's not good soup, but it is soup, and soup is pretty good.
Nice. Okay, very cool. Well, good to see you. Check you out. You usually do streams on Saturday, right?
Yep, we'll be starting the Saturdays back up within the next month or so over on Rated M, and Saturdays Rapid Respawn. Catch us playing hard shit and die into it. Happy while doing it.
Probably a lot of FNC Firebreak when that comes out.
Oh, absolutely.
Very cool there. So, Tim, take care, man. Love to have you on again. All right. Yeah, one more video game review. And then after this, I don't think we can do Batman. I got to probably leave because my screen starts at 10:15.
Fair enough.
Can you do Wednesday?
Not this week, but Monday next week for sure I'll be open.
Okay. So Batman for sure next week. Batman for sure. Let's see there. So I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go this. But so this will be the last review of the night. And yeah, do this. All right. So I'll queue up this Assassin's Creed Shadow here and do a review for that last game. Interested what you're gonna give this. Very, very interested here. All right, so Sage's last review of the day is going to be for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Sage, what do you think about this game?
It's it's kind of like the MCU where I keep thinking, I think I'm done with this franchise, and I keep getting pulled back in, and I've played all of them, like except for Mirage that came out last year, or maybe that was 2023. But I still somehow I've played every single one of these games. I completed this at around, I believe it was about 70 hours it took to do everything, and it's a little bit of a mixed bag here. I think it's very hard, probably for most people that play a lot of games, to come to this and not think of Ghost of Tsushima, especially because people have been saying for a decade plus at this point, come on, Assassin's Creed, make a game set in Japan. Like back when the Ezio games were still coming out, people were saying, hey, let's go to Japan, do a game in Japan. That'd be a really great setting. And then they waited so long, and another game, Ghost of Tsushima, came around and did an open world game with samurai gameplay, but also stealth mechanics, and it did it so well that I think it's going to be hard for this game to totally step outside of that shadow. Um, but yeah, let's give it a fair shake, right? So you come in here, you got two playable protagonists here. You have Naue, who is a shinobi, and the game starts off with her family getting murdered by this gang of like six villains. They do like a super villain lineup and everything when they kill her father in like the opening sequence of the game. And she swears revenge, right? She's going on this revenge quest. Meanwhile, one of the people she is targeting, Oda Nobunaga, who is Yasuke's retainer, of course, and then Yasuke is your second playable character. And that's how he kind of gets tangled up in this whole conspiracy. When Nobunaga dies, these two come together. They realize that they're kind of working towards the same goal. They partner up, and from there, the story kind of drifts into the background of the gameplay for I'd say most of the game here. Um, and that's not to say that it's a bad story, but it is a bit of a forgettable one. Yasuke, I think, is more interesting of these two protagonists. I think the stranger in a strange land archetype is just more unique, at least within the Assassin's Creed franchise. There's not been too many games with that setup. But with Naue's revenge story, this franchise made its name with Ezio being a revenge story, right? And that was executed so well that you're kind of setting yourself up to really have to live up to something great in doing that. And I don't think her character ever really expands beyond just kind of that basic revenge quest archetype. So there's moments here and there where these characters do have some chemistry with each other, and their friendship can be enjoyable. But their bigger goals, like the ends that this game is kind of striving towards, well, one, I feel like it's kind of hard to stay engaged because the game it spends a lot of time on there's this big tree of quests that you're on, right? You've got like the six targets that kind of kicked everything off at the beginning. You got to take all them out, and then but as you discover more and more of the world, there's these other circles of other targets, and all these things kind of appear on this menu, and it gets to be so big that it's not even that it's unmanageable, but I think you lose track of what the main story thread is. Yeah, all of these side threads, none of them necessarily feel like the main story at a certain point. Like you're kind of just assassinating targets. And one thing that this game is missing that I think the last game that I remember really doing it was Origins. But if you played any of the older Assassin's Creed games, you know that the franchise used to have these moments where when you would assassinate a really important target, there would be this kind of moment where the world would melt away and it would just be the animus background and your protagonist and the target. And they'd have it's kind of a deeper conversation about why they were doing what they did and how they were right philosophically from their perspective. It was something that made the Ezio games really, really great back in the day. And the last game that did that was Origins. And this game, I think, is really sorely missing that element of it. Because I think without that, all of the villains and the targets, they end up melting away. You kind of forget about them as personalities as soon as you killed them. Now, on the flip side, the gameplay of getting to that point and actually killing them, I think that is actually pretty excellent. The way that you maneuver through the world, the animations for the parkour, actually flipping around on the rooftops, getting down from places, climbing up, all that maneuverability, that's really strong. Really, really like that. You get a lot of tools to navigate. It's some of the best stealth I think the franchise has ever had with Naue. You can knock out lights to create more shadow. I mean, literally, Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's in the gameplay itself as an actual mechanic. You can approach different areas in really different ways, depending on whether it's daytime or nighttime. They'll have different like patrol and numbers of guards. And on top of that, you also have this really great, and this is, I think, new. I don't think this has been done before. a season cycle. So not just a day and night cycle, but a season cycle where it'll change from spring to summer to winter to fall. And you have a really cool set of mechanics here where, let's say, try to get into this castle, and the best way in is to use like a reed to swim underneath the surface of the water and breathe up through the reed. And you can swim in, and you can get like pretty much all the way to where you need to go just by doing that. Let's say it's winter, that water's going to be frozen over. You have to then go, all right, what's a completely different way to approach the situation? And there's a lot of great examples like that that are they're very dynamic. That as you go into these different areas, super well done, super creative. I would love they're talking about like a Black Flag remake right now. If you could make a remake of that game, like get that season change thing going and bring that from this game back over to that would improve that game tenfold. Like I cannot like say enough how good I think this like the stealth and the seasonal mechanics are in this. The combat pretty good. It is if you've played any of the RPG Assassin's Creed games, you're going to be pretty familiar with it. It's the like R1, R2 trigger for your melee swing. You got your ranged stuff. It's basic in a certain way, but I think it works for this type of game. You don't want to get too complicated with all the weapon systems here, so it's pretty standard. Like, hey, you get your loot. It's like legendary, common, rare, that sort of thing, color coded to see how valuable it is. Higher level stuff, you replace it. It can get a little tedious at times, switching everything out as you find better stuff. But I do think it is much more manageable than Valhalla, which is the last major game, which personally I actually disliked Valhalla quite a bit, even though that's Ubisoft's highest selling game in the franchise, which I think the pandemic had a lot to do with. But that being said, I think this game does understand that that game was a little too bloated. It was a little too big, a little too much of it. As far as like side quests where you're kind of doing the same thing every single time you find one, or just busy work fetch quests, this game is a real improvement on that. I think its open world it's smaller. It's still big, but it's smaller. It is more compact. It
Jeez.
is just straight out boom off the side there.
Hmm.
I enjoy doing that quite a bit. Um, but it is a more compact open world. It is able to, I think, streamline some of the bloated stuff about some of the previous games, the last two in particular. That being said, it still suffers from some of that open world bloat. There is still, I think, more than there needs to be. I think you could still make this smaller. You could still bring the size of the map down some because there is still, even though it's better, there is still some points where you're just wandering between two areas and there's really not anything in between them. Like you're just trying to get to the next area and it's just a trek through this area with not really that much interesting to stop and do. The environment's beautiful. Like this game is beautiful looking. Visually, it's gorgeous. The environments are great. And again, with the seasonal changes that happen to go from winter to fall, the colors of the trees when that happens are beautiful. You actually get like you get to see that brief moment in the year where the cherry blossoms bloom and how beautiful that is and the effect on like the culture of the area that creates. A lot of really great stuff there. But like I was saying with the story, and this is part of that, the one point in which the visuals do kind of drag it down a little bit, and this has just been, I don't know why, I don't know what the problem is, but this has just been the case with Ubisoft for a long time. But there's just these characters they just have a bad case of Ubisoft face. Like there's just something weird about the way their facial animations move, and like it's like you remember people making jokes about like the animation and like the Telltale Walking Dead games where like the characters would have these very exaggerated expressions and they'd only have a few of them.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
These Ubisoft games, they have a little bit of that. It's not quite as maybe over the top as that is, especially because that had this more cartoony art style. But there is something about the animations in the faces in this that they just look very wooden. They're just not super expressive. And then when they do move, it can be very awkward and wooden. Like the models, the characters, the skin, the hair, the clothes, that all looks amazing. But just sometimes when they're trying to emote, it just isn't coming across.
Mm, yeah. You see a little bit of it here. Yeah, not too much expression there. I would say with the faces there. It's
Like the way the eyebrows move, it's like they're very up and then down, and then they feel like video game characters, you know. Like there's a lot of the best games, they kind of melt away, and you when you're truly immersed, you want to forget that you're playing a game, right? That's the goal ultimately, especially in an RPG, right? Which is what this is. You want to immerse yourself so fully in what's going on that you forget you're even playing a game. You're just experiencing a story. You're just engaged in what's going on, and the faces in this, you're constant, and it's not just this game. I mean, it's a Ubisoft, it's a company-wide thing. That last Star Wars game had this problem. Assassin's Creed 10 years ago had this problem. Um, but it takes you out of it during cutscenes when it's like you want to get into what these characters are talking about, but they're very rough face movements, and also just the dialogue. I just don't think is that great. It's very cliche. I think a lot of the time it's very tropey, especially with the revenge quest stuff. It's very simple. And it doesn't help that, like I was saying at the beginning of the review, this game lives in the shadow of Ghost of Tsushima. It does not help that later this year, Ghost of Yotei is going to come out with a female main character whose family is killed at the beginning by six villains that you then have to hunt down one at a time. So it's almost the same plot structure, even. But it looks like Ghost of Yotei is just doing it with a lot more personality and a lot more engaging, uh, emotive characters. And so, releasing the same year as that is not doing this any favors. And I do think in the long run, this game will be a little forgotten about in favor of that. Um, I mean, we'll see how it comes out, but I think Ghost of Yotei is more than likely going to be a very impressive showcase. But yeah, listen, like I said, it's and I sound negative when I say that, but it's not all bad here. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in this experience. I would describe this game as is it's a really good like podcast game. Like, do you want to sit down and play a game, but not fully pay attention to it? Maybe like, do you not want to totally have to think about what's going on in the narrative? Do you want to be able to put a podcast on or play music and kind of listen to something else at the same time and just kind of chill and explore? This is a really good game for that. To not feel, and maybe it sounds like a backhanded compliment because again, with the story not being the greatest, but it is the kind of game where you can kind of get lost in it, have something else going on. You're listening to something else, whether it's podcast or the news or music or just something else, and you kind of sink away and lose yourself in it. You can do it that way, and I think that's probably this game at its most effective. But if you're really like I was trying to really sit in, listen to the characters, absorb what's going on in the narrative, I think you can hit a bit of a wall with it because I think you're absorbing a lot of like junk food information with the story. It's a lot of like filler and kind of dialogue that doesn't go anywhere or really feel like it means a whole lot. Um, so yeah, ultimately the story here it's pretty weak, honestly. But I think it's held up by some very good gameplay, some very good exploration, some very fun combat and stealth mechanics that you can engage with, and a world that's visually a feast, right? Like a really amazing to look at. Um, then I also want to bring up that I encountered one like game-breaking bug in this game that is going to be a point docked off on the review because so this was a bug day one on release. I saw like posts from, or maybe day two, but I went online because I was like, how do I fix this problem? Saw a ton of people talking about this. is a huge issue. Multiple patches have been released for the game, and this has not been fixed, at least not for everybody. And basically, what happened is an NPC that you need to speak to progress the main story quest was spawning in the wrong location, right? A decent ways away in like a completely different place on the map. And the only solution, and I did this, I did sit and I did this. The only solution to this problem, oh God, I didn't even see that.
So this is a
That's a simple.
compilation of the various bugs in the game that you can see here.
Okay. I didn't have overall too many, and little and visual glitches like this in a big open world game can even there can even be something charming about the jankiness to it at times if it doesn't stop you from making progress in the game. There could sometimes be something fun about having silly stuff like that happen. But the what I experienced was like a you can't keep playing the game. Like this, it broke the game. But what the solution was I had to so you can't even just run into the guy. You have to crouch and then slowly walk into the person, and it'll get him to like kind of like back up a little bit. And it doesn't even work every time you do it. So I had to spend like 3 hours just doing this, slowly inching this guy. I had to get him like down like 6 flights of stairs out of a castle, across like a whole bunch of roads and bridges into a different castle, and then finally it triggered so that you could speak to him again. That was obnoxious. That was a really obnoxious thing to sit through. And especially when it's like there's been multiple patches for this game. How is Ubisoft not fixing this problem already? Like I don't understand how that's not getting fixed faster. Because I mean, look, I'm not a coder. Maybe it's more complicated than I'm able to realize, but it's just this guy's in the wrong spot. That can't be that hard to fix, especially when so many people are having issues with this. I've seen worse bugs get fixed faster in other games. So it just to me it doesn't make sense that it's not together yet. But I'm going to take a little bit of a point on that because that was like 3 hours of time I had to spend doing that. Um, but I'm still not going to say that that just negates any fun that I had with the game. There is still a lot of positivity that I do have here.
Mm. So it being a Ubisoft game, is it typical Ubisoft? Is it a little above average? Is it kind of typical when it comes to you?
I'd say it's above average with the gameplay. I think it is an improvement over the last couple AC games, and I think it's definitely better than a lot of the other like Far Cry or the Star Wars Outlaws game type stuff that you see coming out of the company. This did feel like it had more effort and more time put into it than some of those other titles did. Um, but it is still suffering from some of those typical Ubisoft problems, even though it is, I think, a step in the right direction. And I do think I want to praise them for that and say, keep going this way. This is a good start. Like this company should follow the positivity that this game has gotten and try and figure out why this has been received a bit better than some of their other stuff. So I really highly encourage them to look at why this game is successful versus some of the other stuff they released. But it's still some of the typical Ubisoft problems, so it's not all the way there. But like I said, I want to praise where praise is due. Um, they've had a lot of misses for me in recent years. Like the last Ubisoft game I played and enjoyed before this was in 2017. So, almost 10 years later, hey, you know what? You guys got something that I think is at least decent. It's good, maybe good with a lowercase g, but I think good.
Mm. And you playing dual characters, as you said. Which character did you like playing the most?
I like the stealth gameplay of Naue probably overall the most. I think there's just a lot of options and creative ways you can approach the different environments. But in terms of the personalities of the character, I thought she was very boring in terms of like dialogue and stuff. So in terms of like who did I enjoy spending time with more, I enjoyed spending my time with Yasuke more, but she had more tools to mess around with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we saw a little bit of Yasuke, his gameplay of him just kicking people, Spartan kicking people all across the screen there.
You can
Easily,
just rip people apart.
yeah, very much a bulldozer tank type character there. So that's probably
You
pretty
can
fun.
Kool-Aid man your way through walls even.
Yeah, oh yeah, you see that with him. So that's pretty. That can be some fun for some players there. So where would you rank this Assassin's Creed game out of the other Assassin's Creed games you've played?
So I'd say I don't think it's as good as, say, the original Ezio trilogy or Black Flag or Origins. But I do think it is better than, let's say, Valhalla or Mirage or Unity, which was a complete mess when it came out. Say maybe I like Syndicate just a little bit more. I'd say it goes somewhere in the middle if I was to rank all of them and put them in order, somewhere near the middle or like the high middle. Like I said, there's a lot of good here. It's not fully able to escape the problems of the franchise, and it's particularly when it comes to the narrative part of the whole thing. You really feel a sense of corporate, like focus group, like what's going to appeal to the biggest mass number of players to make our shareholders happy and increase profit. Like there is even when I'm having fun with the game, there is a little bit of that sensation the whole time where you just I never once felt like, hey, somebody had a vision and they were like passionate about making this game. I feel like the people that made this game, I'm sure there were probably passionate artists mixed in here, but I think the kind of big budget and the bloated budget corporate interest of it, it keeps it ever from, really feeling like a piece of art. It always feels like a product. And at times it feels like a good product too. I don't know. Again, I don't want to discount any positive elements to this, but it does always feel like a product over being a piece of art. And I think that's important to know going into it.
Hmm. Score wise, it seems like it's kind of similar to Valhalla in terms of scores with critic reviews here. It did better than it seems like critically than Mirage, Assassin's Creed Shadows here. So it seems like mostly getting kind of we see here on Metacritic, PC 79 out of 100, console which you played it on PS5 81 out of 100. We have also Xbox there 85 out of 100. Open critic score of 82%. You have that there. So it seems like generally kind of a slightly above average there.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of got out of there. Um, Sales wise, you mentioned like you said, a lot of people. I think Valhalla is one of the highest grossing games for the
it is,
franchise.
I think, the highest. And part of that is the pandemic. That game came out when everybody was, I mean, it just came out when everybody was at home. And video
Mm,
game sales in general across the industry, across multiple franchises, console sales, everything was up, right? Everything was up. That's one of the reasons we've seen so many layoffs in the video games industry in the last couple of years because these corporations, they think infinite growth is just always possible. So they mass hired during the pandemic because, oh, way more people are playing video games. All our numbers are going up. And they were mystified when numbers went back down again after the pandemic, and they just could not grasp the idea that that was a temporary high. So that is part of why Valhalla did as well as it did. But this is, I believe, the second biggest launch after Valhalla. So and fully out of the pandemic. So this game is standing on its own 2 feet as far as the sales go.
yeah. So it says here, this is Wikipedia. So on the sales page here, so it says Ubisoft stated that Assassin's Creed Shadows surpassed 1 million players on its release date, had 3 million players within a week. Steam showed a concurrent player count peak of 41,412 on launch day, growing to 64,825 during the first weekend after launch. The feat established the game as the highest Assassin's Creed game by concurrent players on Steam to date, according to analysts. By market research from Securion. Shadows was the best-selling game of March 2025 in the U.S. and the second best selling game of the year in the U.S. as of April, behind Monster Hunter Wilds and ahead of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. According to market research from firm GfK, Assassin's Creed Shadow had the largest physical video game launch in the United Kingdom in 2025, surpassing Monster Hunter Wilds. In March 2025, market research from New Zoo reported that it debuted as the second highest grossing game across the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and Italy, trailing only Fortnite. According to Ubisoft fiscal report from 2024 to 2025, Assassin's Creed Shadow has surpassed Assassin's Creed Odyssey in consumer spending and achieved the second highest day one sales revenue in the history of the franchise, ranking only behind Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So you had that with it in terms of sale wise. So it seems like it's doing okay there sales wise. Yeah. So what would be your final rating for Assassin's Creed Shadow?
So I'm gonna give it I'm gonna say a high stream it. Now I will say if not for that game breaking bug that really soured a part of the late game experience for me, if that hadn't happened, I think I would give it just a regular tune in. So for people in the future, maybe listening to this later on, and a patch has come along and fixed that game breaking bug, it's a tune in for those people. But as of right now, until that bug is fixed, where you're gonna have to do some total BS to like fix the game and get it to work, I'd say stream it. And because there's still, again, a lot of fun to be had here. Put a podcast on, find something to listen to. Maybe you're even hanging out with a roommate or a spouse, and they're doing their own thing, and they're reading a book, or you're listening to music together. And this is something to have on in the background. And again, it might sound like a bit of a backhanded compliment to say it's really good for background noise, but I do mean it genuinely. There's still a lot of fun and 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 good times to be had here. It's just not necessarily going to be like sucking you in and having you fully engaged in all aspects of it.
Hmm. Okay. Right now, people can get it for $70. You said to stream it. So would you recommend people maybe wait till it comes on, maybe like something like PlayStation Plus or maybe Game
Yeah,
Pass or
or like a good sale, yeah, or Game Pass or something like that. I mean, I would say, knowing having played the whole thing and done all these every little bit of it that I could, spending like 70 hours on it, I would say I would probably very fairly spend about $30 on this and be very happy with that $30. Like very,
Hmm.
very, very happy with that. If that bug gets fixed, I'd say I'd even be very happy spending full price on it, but not until that bug gets fixed. Like
Hmm.
that is a big sticking point for me. Like you, come on, Ubisoft, got to get these all the hundred. Again, it's we talked about this during the Clair Obscur Expedition 33 review. These giant companies have these multi-$100 million budgets, and these games come out and they spend months, if not years, still getting bug fixes down the line. And it's like, if you had a tighter team with a smaller budget, maybe you wouldn't have to do that. Maybe you'd be able to put something out that worked on day one, that you didn't have people get their progress halted with a brick wall.
Hmm. Yeah. So that was Sage's thoughts. So a high stream it for Assassin's Creed Shadow. People can pick it up now. There. Maybe you want to wait a little bit till there's a discount. Maybe there's a sale kind of going on.
Oh, and one more thing too. I almost forgot to bring this up. This game doesn't have an ending.
Doesn't it? So it's like open ended. They want maybe a sequel to do with this, or
It's going, so the actual ending is going to be a $10 DLC that's going to be coming out sometime in the future. Uh, the way the game ends is literally you go to talk to an NPC about like the next mission, and they have a whole conversation about what the next mission they're going to go do is. And then as they're walking away, the camera goes up to the sky and the logo comes out, and then it goes to credits. And it's like that was one of the most abrupt endings I think I've ever seen in anything. And then you go online, you look it up, and it's like, oh, that's because they literally they couldn't they are either they did it intentionally, maybe the execs wanted to sell this and cut it off for extra profit. But something tells me that even after all the time they've had to make it, because the game is just so big, I think they still were rushing to finish it a little bit. And I honestly think they just couldn't finish the mission in time for the game's release, and so they had to chop it and then release it as like an expansion. Now, if you got the launch day edition, which is what I have over here sitting on the counter over there is a code in the box to get this DLC for free, so you
Mm.
don't have to buy it. But if you bought the game, a month, 2 months, 3 months after it came out, a year later, you'd still have to drop another $10 to get the ending, which is really shady and scummy. Now, if they just put it out for free because they were like, hey, we couldn't finish this, but it's going to be free when it comes out, don't worry. I wouldn't even care. I'd be like, you know what? Fair enough. Team's under a lot of pressure, corporation breathing down your neck. I get sometimes stuff just isn't going to be finished on time because the corporation is just not going to allow that. But the fact that they're charging money for something that was clearly meant to be the ending of the game that's just inexcusable.
Yeah, that sounds like typical Ubisoft there. Yeah, with that. So, all right. Well, thank you, Sage, for your review of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Heading out of here. I'll go ahead and raid somebody. I don't know if you see somebody on your end.
I will check through my list here.
I have the Yes Queen. She's playing some Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I know you love that.
I vote for that. I vote for that's like one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah, so show them some love, and give her a follow if you can. Very nice there. Thank you to Sage. Thank you to Tim for showing up, doing these video game reviews. Sorry we couldn't get to Batman Forever tonight, but hey, we'll be back Monday. Hopefully Sage can join me there next Monday and doing Batman Forever. Finally doing Devil May Cry. Get that off the docket there. Doing that. And do you have any more video game reviews?
I think I might have one more like retro one, but I might have to. I think I still need to finish the game on my replay here, so I'll let you know. But I've got a couple things I'm working on. Indiana Jones, Doom, the Dark Ages. So we'll see where I'm at with those come next week.
Yeah, I'd love to have Ulysses on for Doom Dark Ages. You and him do Doom Dark Ages.
He's the biggest Doom guy in the world, as far as I know. So.
Yeah, so I would love to have two of you on for that. So yeah, Indiana Jones, Doom Dark Ages, all that good stuff there. So that's some future reviews we can look forward to. There. Sage, one more time, let people know what they can find you got going on, what you got coming up next, man.
Yeah. Find me over at Rated M for Immaturity on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all under that exact same name. Tomorrow and for the foreseeable future, every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to be playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33 on New Game Plus. As I've already finished the game, we're going to see how much more difficult that New Game Plus actually is. And all my co-hosts who do not know what's going to be happening, you'll get their fresh reaction to the story. Probably going to be on that for a little while too. It's a decent amount of game, and we're only doing like 2.5 to 3 hours each week, so that'll probably be what we're going on for a while. And then me and Tim should hopefully he's got his computer fixed. So we'll be getting up with our Saturday show again, especially when FBC Firebreak comes out next month. We're going to be playing a lot of that. So Saturday nights should be back on very soon.
You can't finish the con game first?
Yeah, it was painful. It was like physically painful to sit and play.
Okay. I kind of want to see you finish that before playing.
Maybe after a break, like maybe we'll come back to circle back around after we finish something else.
Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and raid them. The Yes Queen there playing that Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Which reminds me, we are going to do. I think Andor season 2 just ended. So that could be.
I'm like halfway through it. I was watching it with one of my with my cousin. We were loving it though, absolutely loving it.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely do a review for that. When we're all done with that.
Quite a few KOTOR references in the show too. Like I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but it's like the other best Star Wars thing is referencing the other best Star Wars thing a lot. So
game recognizes game there. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, so to rate them right here. Like I said, we'll be back Friday. I'll be doing reviews for Hurry Up Tomorrow, Until Dawn, Reacher, Friendship, Lilo and Stitch, and Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning there. Hopefully Nick and Dust can join me for that. To everybody out there, stay tuned.